under normal circumstances, I wouldn't feel comfortable wearing one of these things into a bank if they don't bat an eye
Good? Okay. Welcome everyone to the Maitland City Council meeting of Monday, April 11th. Oh, this is actually May 11th. Everybody please silence their electronic devices. And if you would share with me a moment of silence, keeping our first responders at the forefront of your minds. All righty, thank you very much. If you would, those who are willing and able and in the room and not, please stand with me while we pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and bore you all to tears with some fabulous stuff. Ms. Anna Billick joined the City of Maitland on August 19th, 2020. Yeah, you. As Human Resources Specialist, she's been a tireless and dedicated member of the city staff, who quickly introduced several improvements within the Human Resources Department. Not that there were many after Teresa's 32 years. Anna completed lengthy training and passed the Teresa Walker hazing process and training and testing to earn her certification as a Society of Human Resources Management Certified Professional. Say that fast. She streamlined department filing and ramped up new employees. Quickly introduced several improvements within the Human Resources Department. Not enthusiastic approach to employee relations. She listens, treats them with respect, and assists them with their concerns according to a fellow city employee. First day Anna joined the HR team, she hit the ground running and has not stopped. Anna takes her position very seriously. I love that. She handles delicate issues with the utmost professionalism, just like the mayor. She came to Maitland from Destination MCO, a luxury limo and car service where she was the HR generalist, handling new hire orientations, customer service trainings, and benefit implementation. Prior to that, she was a case manager with the Reed Group. While gaining important job experience, Anna also managed to study to graduate from the University of Central Florida in 2018 with a Master of Science degree in management with a concentration in organizational management. Anna's accomplishments plus her commitment and drive bring to the city a welcome, can-do attitude. Amen. During her short 10 months, she's gained the trust of employees and quickly become a valuable asset to the city and the HR team. For all of this, the City of Maitland is proud to recognize Anna Billick as the employee of the first quarter of 2020. Or you could actually
you say a few words from there if you want.
Thank you very, very much. This is so nice and unexpected. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I really enjoy my time here at the City of Maitland, and I can't wait to continue to grow and learn more and bring back to you, and shout out to Chief. No, but thank you everyone. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And she was managed to be surprised. She
They wouldn't let me in the city hall for the last couple of weeks.
Well, that makes
Afraid
sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, doesn't it? Made that blow the surprise, so we're very proud.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm smiling, but you can't
Me too.
tell.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2. All right. Emergency medical services is a vital public service, whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rates of those who experience sudden illness or injury, whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. Whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical service providers, I designated this as Emergency Medical Services Week. Now therefore, I, A. Dale McDonald, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Maitland, Florida, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through May 23rd, 2020 as Emergency Medical Services Week. EMS strong, ready today, preparing for tomorrow. Now, oh, Will, come on up here, man, and speak.
The slogan, ready today, preparing for tomorrow, couldn't be more true in what we're dealing with these days. Wearing masks, no one could have ever anticipated what we're up against. And quite honestly, no one really can anticipate what we're going to be up against in the future. So I just couldn't be more thankful for the support of council, the city manager, all the senior staff in the city that give us what we need to do our job and keep the citizens safe. So thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Will. Here you go.
I'm smiling.
Yeah, we're going to presume a lot of smiles. Okay. All right. Secondly, but not last, whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are critical to the sustainable and resilient communities and to the health, safety, and well-being of the citizens of the city of Maitland. And whereas public works services in Maitland include activities such as engineering, wastewater collection, stormwater and lakes management, grounds maintenance, water production and distribution, streets and facilities maintenance, harbor services, and fleet maintenance. Whereas such public works services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of our public works professionals, engineers, managers, supervisors, and employees of the city of Maitland. Whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff wastewater collection, stormwater and lakes management, grounds maintenance, water production. Now this year, whereas the year 2020 marks marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now therefore, I, A. Dale McDonald, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Maitland, Florida. Glad you all were listening. Do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through May 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. Ms. Kim.
Say a few words.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Public Works Department, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for your appreciation and your continual support.
Well, that was way too short. They are better than you know. Thanks, man.
You got city council week, I think.
Now, that would be a really short proclamation, I got that. Okay, now, last but certainly not least, whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, all that are ranked below Maitland, including 51 sworn members of the Maitland Police Department. I did throw that in. Whereas approximately 59,000 assaults against law enforcement officers were reported in 2019, including several assaults to our own Maitland police officers. Whereas since the first reported death in 1791, more than 24,199 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice, having been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, which was dedicated in 1991 in D.C. And whereas last year 146 officers lost their lives in the line of duty, 7 of them from the state of Florida. Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored, the names of the officers newly engraved on the memorial will be formally dedicated during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial 32nd Annual Candlelight Vigil. And whereas the memorial service is part of National Police Week, which takes place the week of May 10th through May 16th this week. And whereas May 15th is designated as the Peace Officers Memorial Day, of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored. The names of the officers newly engraved on the memorial will be officers and their families. Whereas the city recognizes the bravery and sacrifice that our Maitland police officers display on a daily basis while ensuring our safety, and we honor their commitment to our community. Now therefore, I, A. Dale McDonald, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Maitland, Florida, do hereby proclaim the week of May 10th through May 16th, 2020 as National Police Week. Hey.
Mayor, thank you, City Council, City Manager. I say this many times, the City of Maitland is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to work for. I'm very proud to say that your police department still has one of the lowest crime rates in Orange County and Central Florida. That being said, we're not immune to violence. As you know, in the last couple of pass-ons, we've had a couple severe, very violent crimes in the city. And you couple that with the officers having to deal with the Corona-19 and how they're dealing with on the street. I think more than now than any, it is a good time to thank your first responders, your police officers and firefighters more than ever. And we do appreciate what you do for us as a city, we really do. We thank you for this every year, and we're dedicated to serve you in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I can tell when you're smiling. Okay. Moving on, we don't have any public hearings scheduled? Alrighty. Is there anything that, any old business, Sharon, that we want to address?
I thought I'd just combine that with my report at the end.
Okay. Is there anything we want to move?
So, yeah, we did have one request from the community office director, whether we could move item number 3, which is a development petition.
Okay.
Yeah, to item number 1 of decisions, and then take the rest of them in the same order there, if that's your pleasure. I see people here want to talk about it, so.
Council okay with that? Yeah, very good.
Good idea.
We'll do that next year. So, yeah, so decision item number 3 will now become number 1, correct? All right. Okay. Everybody had a chance to review the consent agenda? Any questions or comments? Anybody from the public like to address any of the particular items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, motion to be in order.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Okay, any other thoughts? None, Ms. Marie, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilman Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Okay. Famous Maitland Puppy agenda items or any items that are not on the agenda tonight.
A little bit about the site history. It was zoned back in 1992 to plan development to allow a bank with a drive-through. And it was zoned to PD to very specifically allow that use and that use only. So that's the reason they're in here to swoop, which would put them in front of the next developments. And then when they redevelop that piece, to underground that, to take down that and add, and it just pushes it down. So we did look at multiple attempts with the applicant. We looked at multiple meetings with Duke Energy, and for all those reasons, staff was supportive of their waiver request and with a recommendation of approval. But they did have some questions and comments and concerns that they asked staff to look into through the technical review of it. One of them being they requested we look into possibly increasing the parking from 53 spaces. At the time it came to P&Z, it wasn't marked and designated at the time. So a designated loading zone has been identified and of course will be signed to limit the hours of operation for loading. The other item P&Z expressed concern about was the overall access and effective traffic flow. The application is providing 3 access points for ratio, Doyle, and Swoop to provide a good. Staff recommends council introduce the proposed ordinance and set a public hearing and action date for June 8th. The applicant is.
There's a lot of variances and waivers needed because the building is built and is that how the code is actually currently written, that if you repurpose an existing building, is there a triggering point with the modifications that's requiring that? And they trigger that?
There's a trigger point on 2 fronts, the size of the expansion or the amount of money expanded towards the value of the site itself. In this case, they're proposing an expansion and quite a few upgrades that trips that financial trigger. If they were not to do the expansion, if they were not to close in the drive-through and add that, then it probably would have been under the threshold and not required.
Because I mean, some of those are just, I mean, it would almost be a negative if you actually made them comply because of what the current facts of the building are. And I think it's a great repurpose of the building. So I mean, I think it's a great use for that.
Yeah, the current code doesn't really address a whole lot of redevelopment type incentives or opportunities. The proposed code that will be coming to you does have a little bit more leeway in that because we do want to encourage reuse and especially vacant buildings, bringing them up to.
That was my kind of question on it, because I know we're in the midst of this. Is on if the thought isn't to move that direction, let's do it, because I don't think this is the last building that we could see repurposed, and we'd always somewhat encourage it, not discourage it a little bit. So those are my points. Thank you.
Very good. It's council's pleasure. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant's representative. And maybe she can shed some light on questions we might have.
Good evening. My name is Tara Tedrow, Lowndes 215 North Yola Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. A lot of the information I'm going to tell you just heard from staff because their presentation was very thorough, which I should have predicted, so sorry for repeating some of this, but I think it's probably worth mentioning again. Just for orientation purposes, this shows you the current site conditions. It is an old and vacant bank, and since my client bought the property years ago, nothing's been done with it, and really the market conditions aren't supportive, and I don't think anybody in the city wants, nor does your code support having another drive-through bank there. So we've tried to get creative as to what the best use is, and I think even in the market conditions now, what we're proposing is probably the best long-term use you're going to get in a building like this too, so we're excited for the upgrades that will come. Nor does your code support having another drive-through bank there. So we've tried to get creative as to what the best use is, and I think even in the market conditions now, what we're proposing is probably the best long-term use you're going to get in a building like this too, so we're excited for the upgrades that will come. And we were thinking about this just over the last bank there, so we've tried to get creative. After we got DRC's recommendation for approval was perhaps we would have something between the current site of $5,075 up to the total amount we're asking. So at the end, I will ask if perhaps council would be agreeable to allow us to keep the existing building size all the way up to the modification amount that we've requested, just to give a little flexibility in the design in case we don't end up utilizing the entire 2,870 square feet that we show on our concept plan. And again, that's just for some market flexibility that we think we might need. Still would have to go through site plan approval, still have to come back to staff if we change anything on the concept plans we're showing you, so we understand that, but just to give you a heads up that is something we'll ask for at the end. The functionality, the aesthetic of the site will certainly be upgraded through our access reconfiguration, the extensive interior improvements, building facade upgrades, landscaping improvements, reduction of overall trip generation from the property, and the pedestrian mobility enhancements as well. This is a corridor that's obviously very busy from a vehicular traffic standpoint, and we want to provide that connectivity from where we sit today all the way over to the project site. For the project details, Main Street future land use with a PD zoning, and we've requested that mix of uses. And as Dan told you, we aren't coming before you to tell you exactly what those uses will be. Again, that's got to be dictated by what the market's going to support us having there. But we're hoping to have something similar to what you might see at East End Market or over at the Foxtail Coffee location in Winter Park, and we'll show you some pictures of that project that my client had done. That's got to be dictated by what the market's going to support us having there. But we're hoping to have something similar to what project specifically with your staff. So they've been very patient. Probably want us to get out of their hair by this point, but it was back in August that we went before P&Z and they moved to approve the amendment and concept plan with some staff directions for review. I'm not going to read these all out to you. I probably could very quickly, but I won't. These are all the permitted uses that are noted on our site plan. Again, that's just a mix of different uses that we would be allowed to have. Just so you see from the site's perspective, we're consolidating the two existing driveways, so circled in red and circled in blue. We're removing the southernmost one-way access drive off of Swoop. We're reducing the size of the egress from the site onto Swoop. I don't think you could get any of that permitted today by FDOT. So these are some substandard driveways and they don't have enough distance between them, so it's actually a safer access point from a vehicular standpoint. And we're providing new cross access from the site onto Swoop. I don't think you could get any of that permitted today by FDOT. So ingress egress points in blue, an existing ingress egress to remain with the red arrows, and then the removal of that one substandard ingress egress path. This shows you the existing sidewalk today, certainly in need of some pedestrian enhancements, and so that's what we're looking forward to doing. The sidewalk's about 4 feet wide right now. We're going to double that to 8 feet wide, enhance the pedestrian bicyclist mobility opportunities at what is a very busy intersection. On Horatio, the sidewalk's about 5 feet wide, and we're upgrading that also to 8 feet wide, enhancing those pedestrian and bicyclist mobility opportunities and providing pedestrians with a direct connection to our outdoor seating and activity center on the site. When it comes to the development details, Councilman Bogg, you're exactly right. A lot of what we're requesting is just simply because it's an adaptive reuse of an existing building, so it may seem like a lot, but just because of the adaptive reuse itself, that's why we have to come before you for a lot of these waivers. And your code sets forth how you consider your waivers, and it's because of the individual unique characteristics or circumstances of a given development, and I would say that that flexibility that your code specifically contemplates is certainly warranted in this situation as well. Moreover, because of a PD zoning district's intended to encourage flexibility, and then if you look at the intention behind your downtown Maitland zoning district circumstances of a given development, and I would say that flexibility that your code specifically contemplates is certainly warranted in this situation as well. Moreover, because of a PD zoning district's intended to incline your code. When When it comes to building frontage, and again, this is what Dan already went over, 75% we can't meet just because of the existing building size, so we're at 35, and with some additional square foot can get up to 56, but we just can't meet 75 simply because of the way the building footprint is today. We also are installing a 74-inch knee wall, proposed a continuous urban form, and the street wall will be architecturally integrated into the building with lightscaping, varieties of landscaping options for some aesthetic enhancement over there as well. And that'll tie into those activity centers outdoor that we'll be offering to our consumers and to the public, and we'll show you those in some photos. The build to line, again, this is just because of the existing height of the one-story building. We cannot get up to the 23 feet without adding an awkward 8 to 9 foot parapet wall above the roof line, which really from an aesthetic standpoint doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. For the sign standards, we do have an existing building canopy area, so that will be at over 13 feet. So we do meet part of the 12 foot above sidewalk code requirement, but we were just asking for the location of another sign to be at about 10 feet above the sidewalk. And again, that's just intentionally done to tie into the pedestrian scale, and I think it actually meets the intention of your code and the downtown Maitland zoning district better than putting another one up at 12 feet. When it comes to the streets, again, this is just because of where the building sits on the property, we can't push the building back to be able to get more sidewalk and more parkway than we currently have. So we've combined the sidewalk and parkway areas. And actually, if you look at this picture, I guess with a magnifying glass because it's kind of small, but if you can see shaded along the exterior of the property, and this is actually one of the staff conditions of approval, is that we have to provide an easement for utilities. So we already have, and as a condition of our approval, and have contemplated, and sometime back sent a draft actually of that easement to staff. So we've given an easement over the entirety of our activity center, the entirety of our sidewalks, and that can be for utilities as well. So if in the future utilities were needed in those areas, I believe we're already providing that on our site plan today, and that is one of the staff conditions of approval that's noted in the staff report. When it comes to undergrounding utilities, we had multiple meetings on site with Duke Energy. Jeremiah Long was incredibly gracious to continue to come out to site and meet with us on some very hot mornings. We've had multiple calls and emails with Duke Energy and staff. Your staff was kind enough to come out multiple times as well to meet us there. We tried to find different site designs. Can we put the transformers here? Can we move them here? And he just kept saying no, because Duke has a specific way that they have to do things if they're going to underground. So under their design that they're willing to approve, we have a lot of poles on this site. So it is not just 1 or 2 poles. We would be removing 5 very large poles, placing 3 switch gears above because Duke has a specific way that they have to do things if they're going to underground. So under their design, and that means the undergrounding would require 14% of our parking spaces to be removed. The loading zone located in the parking spaces nearest to the building would also have to be moved 80 feet from the service area. 29 exfiltration chambers would need to be located somewhere that they're willing to approve. We have a lot of poles on this site. Above ground gear would be located right at the edge of the pavement due to the size of the equipment. And I don't think we can meet that clearance either. So the equipment would be at risk of vehicular damage. We wouldn't be able to screen it because nothing can be planted in front of these access panels. And that means it would be visible from swoop, highly visible from anywhere on the exterior of the site. So from that safety standpoint, that was another item of note. And then the pull boxes in the new sidewalk, which we have to place actually on our sidewalk on the property, and that 8 feet, which is supposed to be for pedestrians and bicyclists, will break up the city's required stamping pattern, create a variation in texture, and potential tripping hazards. So that was another issue that staff had agreed would warrant not undergrounding on this site from a safety standpoint. Something else that I don't think our neighbors would be very happy with, we would just be moving poles from our site right across the street. So you would literally be moving poles on our corner circled in red, and you'd move them right over to the corner circled in orange for where 500 East Horatio is, so where Maitland Jewelers and Banff Comics. And so we're just pushing that down as they go. And so we did not ask them. That was another issue that staff had agreed would probably warrant not undergrounding on the site from a safety standpoint. Something else that I don't think our neighbors would be very happy with, we would just be moving poles that require the removage of their existing signage and would require, I don't know if the city would have to have any sort of taking of part of their property to accomplish that, but it's a significant undertaking. We really put in a good few months of trying to come up with a solution to this, and we're not able to. When it comes to some of the comments from P&Z, as Dan had mentioned, when it came to the loading zone, we did add the loading zone, and that's noted in red up there on the concept plans, and so that will be designated daily. When it came to access and circulation, the proposed development actually improves access and circulation for vehicles and pedestrians. The redevelopment from a bank will reduce the PM peak hour trips by 74. Truck, bicycle, and pedestrian accessibility has been reviewed and approved by your staff. With the mix of uses, this is the parking calculations that you were also shown. A shopping center, because it's a multitude of commercial uses under one common ownership, which is exactly what we have today. And just like a shopping center, you don't necessarily know who those end tenants are going to be. And so that's the best calculation under an ITE manual standpoint and under a definitional standpoint under your code. And so we have 38 spaces required and 56 are actually provided. We picked up 3 since the last time. And then we've inquired as to shared parking with neighbors over at 340 East Horatio and 125 South Swoop, and we were unable to secure a shared parking agreement with them. And as noted in your staff report, the valet didn't seem appropriate or necessary because we had a sufficient amount and actually were overparked under what the code calculations would have otherwise required. So my client walked over and has met with the neighbors a few times, walked over to the veterinarian's office, mentioned, hey, any option of maybe sharing parking? And they said no, which is understandable. And then we also talked to our neighbors at 125 Swoop, and we offered different types of commercial liability insurance, or what can we do to get an agreement, and that was a no. So he was gracious to come walk the site with us and try to come up with some ideas, but there was no option for shared parking there. We also actually tried to get an easement as well on his property to relocate all of the underground utility above ground transformer boxes. We couldn't get that easement either. From an access and circulation standpoint, we're going to provide an easement to the city for public purposes for utilities, sidewalks, and streetscapes. And these are all the staff conditions that Dan had read out there in the staff report. And we have to get that prior to the issuance of a CO. We've already, like I said, submitted that draft and happy to get that draft in final form before we come back on June 8th, if that would provide more comfort for the council. We also have to design and construct all required streetscape elements consistent with the DMZD, except as modified tonight. Maintain a mix of more than one use. Drive-through uses facilities will be prohibited, and alcohol sales only during times of food services. So just some conceptual images that you saw. This shows you where there's going to be the pedestrian connectivity on the sidewalks, and you have those activity and streetscape areas. And I think they'll come to life a little more when I show you what they look like over at another project that my client has successfully developed. This just shows you another image of what I think looks like a very cool modern adaptive reuse of that existing building. Doesn't take a whole lot to upgrade that existing facade, but we think we've definitely gone above and beyond. I think this one looks really nice. And this just shows you some of those outdoor spaces. Looks like unintentionally everybody is already social distancing in that picture, so that's good. All right, the example of our recent local redevelopment project. This was the State Auto Body Repair Building in Winter Park, if you know, along North Orange Avenue. That was the State Auto Body Shop, and it was not much to look at. And that's what it is today. And that is a real image of what the redevelopment has done. And you see these great outdoor activity spaces where it really brings alive the urban form. It gets the community to want to spend time out there. You know, they go to the local coffee shop, or the Create Your Nature, or there's a hair salon. So it's really a wonderful adaptive reuse of that building, and a mix of uses provided to the community. This shows you it lit up at night, and again, just some more images of where those outdoor activity centers that we would model similarly on our project site as well, has been successfully done over there in Winter Park, and shows you some of the interiors of the types of tenants that we brought in. So our request, the basis for our approval is that the project is consistent with your code, it's compatible with the surrounding area, our site plan is consistent with your comprehensive development plan, and the proposed development can create an environment of substantial desirability and stability. So our request is to introduce the ordinance to amend 360 ratio at PD, move that for a public hearing to June 8th, and then what I had noted earlier was allow us to redevelop the site either at the existing square footage up to 7,945 square feet, subject to site plan review and approval by staff. So we could go anywhere between existing and up to 7,945. And with that, I will take a breath and see if you have any questions, and I appreciate your time.
I was going to ask you to take a breath. All right, anybody have any questions of Tara for the moment? I can go to Tara.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So Dan, and this is for both maybe, but that list of uses on, is that the way we have to do it instead of saying any use provided in X district?
So we talked about doing that. The problem is we're in transition of changing what uses are provided in that district. We're eliminating some of the general commercial type zoning. The existing PD was very specific to a bank only.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to tie anything into that because that would require them to come back in for anything. So we gave a general list of uses that are basically professional services, office uses, retail, restaurant, things like that. So if you want to compare, yeah, it's generally what's allowed in the downtown area with the exception of a few things.
So my reservation there is, and obviously no one could have predicted what happened, no one's going to try to predict what's going to happen in the future, but from a retail perspective, it looks like the redevelopment of the auto body, and I think that was Sweet Central or something next to it way back, but would look great. But I mean, of that list, I mean, there's party supplies and other things that you wouldn't necessarily want 100% of that square footage dedicated to one of those specific uses. So I don't know if there's a way to fix that. I mean, my concern is that that building becomes a single purpose building. That laundry list of permitted uses is a lot of things. And the thought is that you give a laundry list because you're going to have a bunch of different tenants in there and needing flexibility. That's great, but I think there's nothing prohibiting from one of those uses taking up the 8,000 square feet, or am I wrong on that?
And what are the conditions of approval is that it has to have a minimum of more than one use. So it's going to have at least 2 uses in there.
Well, fine.
Yeah.
But 2 uses could be 7,000 feet.
Correct, correct.
One person could be 895 square feet. So I think we should look at some of those uses, because I don't know that we would want any one of those. Some of them, I think we would want to limit the square footage. I think some of them would probably be limited by code. My guess is if you went to 100% office, you'd trigger some traffic, some parking space issues. But I don't know that you'd want 100% of that being a liquor store, for example. I don't know that you want 100% of that being, or 92% of it being any specific use. So I would look at that list.
And we can work with the applicant before it comes back to you to, if there's any specific uses in that list that we just want to take off, now's the time to do it.
I'm not trying to judge, because like I said, I have no idea what the future's going to bring.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to limit their potential ability there. I just think that the goal should be to focus, because I think it's a great concept, and the mixed use and the variety of uses is great. I just don't know that we would, on some of those, want that to be the predominant use of that building. So I think I would look at, and we can go through it separately if you want, but I'm sure you could look at it.
Yeah, and we'll be happy to work with the applicant before it comes back, and whether it's no more than 25% B1 use or something like that, we can work with them and see.
I would maybe look at capping no more than certain, and then cap some of those uses at certain square footages.
Right.
I think would be good. And then what is there any talk of the of that rule? And I don't know what the law is currently about being able to take drinks off premises, and how that works. And
You know about the emergency order?
yeah, because I know that people have said that's awesome, and can we make that permanent?
No, they're not about making it permanent.
Really? I thought I read something that there was actually moves to try to make that in certain areas to try to.
Tara's actually one of the state experts in.
So I don't know what's going to happen with the way statutory law permits off-site consumption. The way the law is written now is that the only place that a licensed premises can sell alcohol for consumption is on the physical limitations of the licensed premises itself. So, for example, we couldn't have the removal of any alcohol off-site. So you couldn't walk from our facility here with a drink in your hand. I think that would take a special act, actually, for a local government to try to change those regulations in a specific jurisdiction. And I don't know if there's going to be any action by the governor to try to change the carry-out and to-go, because everybody is really enjoying that a lot. I think the restaurants are too, but I'm not sure. The way we have it is that the only eligible license application we could get for a liquor license would be one of two things. We could get a 2-cup license, and that's beer or wine, on-premise consumption or off-premise sales. And then there's something called 4-cup SFS, and that's a special food service. And that under state law requires 2,500 square feet of service area and the ability to have at least 150 patrons. So we have to separately qualify under state law, and your zoning department has to sign off on our liquor license application that goes to the state. So it's a coordination between us and the city when we try to go in for any liquor license. I'm not sure what it'll look like at that time, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how long this goes on, obviously, what we're operating under now and what that looks like. And so to try to be, I know for our businesses downtown, I think it's helped them through this crazy time and challenges. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just
going for any liquor license. I'm not sure what it'll look like at that time, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how long this goes on, obviously, what we're operating under now and what that looks like. And so to try to be, I know for our
Just a few general ones. Since, I don't know when, we've been thinking about the day we started tracking projects like this. And because we never have before.
It's about time, isn't it?
And now we got, this is just kind of what we wanted to come here. And this will, I think, spur other projects to come. We've got a high-quality developer. The Foxdale is a great little project. We get rid of that tumor sitting out there. I remember we used to have so many banks in Maitland. I used to call this the Grand Cayman.
28 at one time in the CRA.
And we're getting rid of one of them. As someone who's had his little kids and they're little on that sidewalk, just scares the living hell out of you. And to have that sidewalk widened and to have people in the dominant neighborhoods and north of Horatio be able to come under that mini ha-ha bridge. As someone who's had his little kids and they're little on that sidewalk, pedestrian, bike access. So I just think this checks all the boxes. They're still coming forward despite, the current situation because they're thinking long term. So it's from 30,000 feet, I couldn't be happier that we're getting a project like this. And compliment this. I just think this checks all the boxes. They're still coming forward. I'll leave the details up to Mike.
Yeah. Vance, you have any thoughts?
Well, I was on planning and zoning when this came to planning and zoning, so I've already kind of know the history, and I do have some questions for later on, but no, nothing for right now. I'll just hold off until I take public hearing.
Miss Lindsay, can you hear okay?
I can hear just fine.
Okay. Do you have any questions of the applicant?
Not necessarily. I'm very much in favor of the project. I'm really excited about the opportunity to have, I'm a frequent shopper at East End Market. My law practice office used to be off of Palmetto and Winter Park, right behind the old auto body shop, which was turned into the Foxdale, so I'm very familiar with that parcel as well. I'm very excited that we could have our own one of those in Maitland, and I think it's going to be a great project. My only concern is kind of going back to what Mike was talking about earlier about the undergrounding issue, and I realize that the applicant has done everything they possibly can to comply and to make the necessary adjustments, and have tried every way from Sunday to try and make this work for them. And I realize it's just not feasible and that the only solution would be to put the poles on the adjacent property, and there's a lot of concern there. My only concern is that we do need to come up with some sort of a good long-term solution for the undergrounding project, because we're just kicking the can down the road here. If on this project it doesn't work, well, on the next project it doesn't work. You know, I would like to see us find some sort of a solution. I think the easement agreement is probably the best we're going to get for the moment, but I don't have any other particular concerns. I will say I think that it's going to be exciting if we can get it completed and tenants moved in, and I'm looking forward to that.
All right, thank you, ma'am. From your mouth to God's ears. How about, I don't think I have anything to add at the moment. Let's go ahead and give the public, anybody here in the public that would like to address this specific agenda item, now would be the time. Hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to council, and a motion to move it forward would be appropriate.
Well, yeah, I did have
okay.
a couple things.
I thought you were talking about later was like June.
No, I don't know if these are to be addressed now, but, so that access to Doyle,
Hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to council, and a motion to move it forward would be appropriate.
a lot of traffic.
Well,
yeah, I did have a couple things.
I thought you were talking about later was like June.
Right. No, I don't know if these are to be addressed now, but, so, and this is a great project. In fact, the one reason that we said that we would like to see more parking is because we believe this is going to be a phenomenal project, and I think, you know, you're going to have a lot of people there. But there were the issues of coming out onto Doyle and just increasing what's already used as a cut through, people cutting through that McDonald's to try to make a right.
What was the distance from the corner to Doyle? Was that even like a good area from Horatio? From 1792 on Horatio.
I think it's about 130 feet.
So that
Is that
pretty good.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's third?
Yeah.
Yeah, this right here is 133 feet right here.
So I think we might have discussed that as an issue, with a lot of traffic and cut throughs.
Y'all did talk about it, PhD.
Yeah. The other the question is, I saw on there you had, I think, a red circle and an orange circle when you were showing on Swoop and Horatio of the moving. You said if you underground it, you had to move those 2 poles across the street. But in the picture, there's 4 poles, and all the Swoop is undergrounded. Have you discussed with Duke Energy if you wanted to do Swoop just to clean that up for your frontage? What would that take to underground that?
So I'm going to pretend I'm an amateur engineer while answering this. But we asked, so when Jeremiah was on site with us, we said, can we just do half, can we do a ratio, or can we just do Swoop? But because those poles serve, I think, almost all of the ratio near us and all down Swoop, it is not as if you could just do a little bit on the property. Now that's a terrible answer. I don't know if anyone on our team is better, but truly there is no way for us to be able just to take a pole or 2 out because of the way that those utility poles service everywhere around us. So you have to do it all, is the way that he told us. And that would require, again, having to feed in if after you go underground across Swoop and put new poles back up to be able to provide that existing service. And I'm more than happy to, if there's any questions you have, we'll present those to Jeremiah Long. He's been fantastic over at Duke, giving us really quick answers to any questions we have. And I'm happy to get you that answer again as to his justification for why we couldn't do that.
And so when you were talking about the undergrounding, you talked about how it needed to be up front and that became a hazard for driving. And you know, is there no way that you could have run that to the back of the transformer? Because I know the building next to you has one, and it's undergrounded, like right in the middle of the building. Could you not have taking that more to the back side of your property?
We looked at that too, so that was actually a suggestion when we were walking the site with our neighbor over at 125 Swoop, and he said, well, why don't you put those boxes at the back of your property closest to Doyle? Can't do that. So we specifically, after that meeting on site with staff, we copied staff on our email to Duke Energy and said, can we move that to the back of the property? He said no. And I'm happy to forward that correspondence over for y'all, kind of read through the technical details of why Duke came to that conclusion. But we really did try to investigate all of the different options, because if we were going to be stuck with undergrounding, it was really problematic from a site design standpoint, so we had to see if there was even an alternative. And quite frankly, the project's not workable if we have to underground, and that'll just be the decision we have to figure out.
And I guess another question of mine is, with the background, I have a background in hospitality management, and I know that all deliveries don't come on time, things happen and such. And, you know, you have three roads. You have Horatio, you have Doyle, and Swoop. If, say, it shows, your delivery shows up at 1 o'clock during lunch or something, where would the delivery take place?
So if the delivery came outside of our designated delivery hours, and if during the undesignated hours that they showed up, there was not sufficient parking available in the loading zone that we have, then the park, it would have to just come closest adjacent to the building. It wouldn't be in the actual designated loading zone, but it would be, so yeah, so it would be closest to the building. I think we pull up.
So it wouldn't stop on Swoop and just pull up front and put on his blinkers and start bringing stuff in?
Well, from an access standpoint for them, that probably wouldn't make the most sense, because that wouldn't be the closest to where our delivery doors actually are in our building.
Right.
So for I think for the most efficient route of getting some products inside the building, it would have to be directly.
Yeah, is your delivery?
So this is, right there. Sorry that you.
Right.
For those who are not able to, we're pointing, those are those 8 spaces down at the bottom, directly adjacent underneath the 2870, or it would have to pull in, and presumably it would just.
So your door is right there where the price says 70 foot, 2,000.
Right, so we have our access there, to entrance inside for service.
All right. Is just Dan, do you have issues with the access on the Doyle staff?
No, we don't. And again, we looked at, I'll pull that slide back up. We looked at a bunch of different options, and we met with the property owners adjacent to, and looked at options of vacating the road. We looked at right in, right out. The main thing is that this is a public road. It is a public right of way all the way down to here. And if we can't vacate the road, because that completely takes off the access of the veterinarian and this bank here. So the access actually provides a much better circulation. As Tara just said, if for any reason the loading truck came in outside the hours and they had to pull up, there's still 2 means of ingress and egress that would provide that safety issue. So in the event that a loading truck did have to block that, then it would still provide 2 access. What we don't want to do is only 1 access, because then you can get into fire code issues and things like that. So
it seems to me that on the logical route, the in I get off Doyle, but no one, I mean, if you're trying to go any direction, you wouldn't go back out on Doyle. You would go back out to Horatio, or you go back
Well,
out
if I
to
parked in the back parking lot, you gotta remember, there's a back parking lot that is right there where that cut through is. So if I'm there, I'm not gonna go all the way up and then do it. I'll just swing right out and go out. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that the logic to having it go both directions is probably not, if there's no concern, there's no concern, but I don't know the scenario that would make logical sense where you would come back out Doyle, because if you were going to Horatio, you're going to go to Horatio off of Swoop or off of the other entrance. And if you're going to go back down 1792, you're going to go back out Swoop. I mean, you wouldn't go through Doyle and then have to make that zigzag around either through the bank or, I mean, it just doesn't make. I mean, the back out onto Doyle seems to make less sense to me than clearly the in. I think makes sense. But I don't know if if going back out of the Doyle from a site perspective matters. But if it doesn't, if there's no concern and the applicant wants it, I'm not sure it does any harm, but if the issue is putting traffic back on the Doyle, I don't know that anybody would, I mean, maybe I'm not thinking about it, but you would come back around on Swoop to Packwood if you were going to go either direction on 1792, I would think, because you're not going to go also out in a ratio and then hopefully not try to make a U-turn somewhere. So I mean, I think the logical move is to.
You wouldn't take Doyle to Packwood?
Hopefully. But anyway, I think it's a good project. I'll make a motion.
No, I mean, would you take Doyle to Packwood?
I wouldn't,
but I'm saying, if you were part there, you're like, instead of going all the way Swoop and then coming.
No, I mean, I think that it's one thing, you don't necessarily have to forbid it in order to have it be a natural flow of traffic. And my guess is that, like I said, logic will prove that.
Right. And how does McDonald's feel about this?
It's our right. I don't know that they're.
What? No, you just said that is McDonald's.
Well, it's a public street to the southern boundary of McDonald's. From that point forward, if I'm correct, that's an easement.
The easement?
That's that extends to Packwood. I have lots of logistical concerns. We'll worry about it next on the 8th. Because I did sit through E&Z and clearly understand. But Michael, you're ready to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this forward for the, what is it, June, public hearing June 8th. Set a public hearing date for June 8th.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Good. Ms. Marie, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Councilwoman Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Councilman Wild.
Aye.
Councilman Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye.
All right, very good. Now, we'll get back to decision item number 1. I got that straight?
Yes, so, decision item number 1 is now decision item number 2.
Yep. Okay.
And Ms. Maria?
Yes. Thank you, guys.
You ready?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And thank you too, Glenn. See you later, man. All right, Ms. Maria, go right ahead.
Thank you. An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 20, Section 2096 of the Maitland City Code to eliminate exemption to prohibit the use of certain fertilizers during restricted season, providing for codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay.
We've already seen this one, right?
Right, so
Yeah.
you had actually introduced this and set a
Yeah.
public hearing date, and then we canceled that meeting.
Back in 1998.
So you need to introduce it again, set the public hearing date for June 8th, but just to let you know, because we're already into the summer at this point, what we did change is to make it effective for next year. We'll get letters out and let the companies know, but we'd like to get it on the books.
Makes sense.
We need to do public periods since we already did public periods.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Sharon's introduced it. Oh, I'm sorry. City manager's introduced it.
Public period.
Public period. Let's get that public period. It has 4P rating.
One at a time, please.
Yeah. Anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Now would be the time. Hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to council, and a motion would be in order.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to forward this for a second reading, I guess, to the June 8th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I so love the sound of that. Any further comments? Ms. Maria, if you would.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Councilman Wild.
Aye.
Councilman Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye.
All right. Now, just scooting right along. Ms. City Clerk, if you would please read the title.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 3, Personal System of the Maitland Code of Ordinances, Section 2-52, Personnel Policies and Procedures in Section 2-53, Same amendment, city managers shall have the authority to update and make administrative changes to the personnel files and procedures, providing for conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, Ms. Sharon.
So the personnel policies were originally adopted in 1971, and at that time, many of the laws we now live with, whether it's FMLA or DOC,
Or even our land development code, go right ahead.
did not exist. They were updated in 1990, but what we found over time is the updates that come in, you don't really have a choice but to adopt them. So you're adopting them via ordinance, which we have to advertise, and seems rather onerous for simply making some administrative changes that you don't have a choice in. They get reviewed by our employment attorney. They usually come down from DOL or some other oversight agency, or they make tweaks that are recommended by our employment attorney because of case law, something that's come out. So what we'd like to do is administrative changes. I'd be able to make those if it's a change that impacts the budget in any way. So in other words, I wouldn't be able to add benefits or remove benefits. We would do those the same way we do with our policy information transmittal.
Right.
We would adopt them with the budget, tell you the cost of those, and you can either choose to include them in the budget or not. So these would, again, just give me the ability to do administrative changes.
Questions? This is too commonsensical. Anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Ms. Teresa, there's. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council on a motion. Would it be in order?
Make a motion, move the ordinance and set a date for, hearing date for June 8th.
Very good. We have a motion
Second.
and a sweet sound of a second. Any other comments? Hearing none, Ms. Maria?
Councilman Wild,
Aye.
Councilman Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilwoman Paul Harrison,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay, let's move on. You want to read the title, Ms. Maria?
Yes, sir. An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, creating a charter review commission, providing that the commission will propose amendments to the charter of the City of Maitland, Florida by report, providing for composition and eligibility of the commission, providing that the majority and minority report to the commission be submitted to the City Council, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
All right, very good. Want to fill us in, Ms.
Sure.
Maria?
So it's been a while since we reviewed the charter. That's something you want to do periodically. We did have some issues that came up that we do need to change related to the
Providing
qualification
that the
period,
majority and minority report to the
primary
commission
preference
be
election,
submitted to the City
and how
Council,
it impacts
providing for severability, providing for
So
an effective
we
date.
don't need to address that.
very
We do have
good.
some suggestions from
Wanna
staff
fill us in?
about some other items that should be looked into as part of this process. Your runoff elections being one of them, something you might want to consider. I know that there's other council folks may have items they want to bring forward to that commission. So tonight would be the first reading to set the public hearing. Between now and then, I put 5 members. That seems to be an optimal number to get this done fairly quickly. They will set public hearing dates, hear from the public. Staff will send in suggestions. I'm assuming you'll all send in some suggestions. And then they'll proceed with, some of the costs will be needing Cliff's time to help us get through that. But one of the things, don't have to decide tonight because you're just setting the public hearing date, but how you want to select those folks. So we've done it different ways. Maria's looked through the files. I think the last time, each council person appointed one person, and then there were 2 at-large appointments. Or you can just do it the same way we do with all of our boards. They apply, first, second, third, they're on. When you get 5 qualified folks, and they do need to be voters.
Perfect. Questions?
When are we gonna decide how to appoint them?
At the next meeting, we were going to hopefully get the charter and the bylaws on there with this reading, and I think at that point you tell us, because that's give us instruction. If it's just going to be like a regular board or committee, we'll just put it out on the website, give them a certain period of time to apply. If you know folks you think would be interested, tell them, see Maria or go on our website, and we bring those applications back to you just like we do now. And then you make your appointments.
I think 5 definitely enough.
I
I'm
agree.
sure that 3 is.
I'd almost go with 3, but
If you remember, there were
That's fine.
29 questions.
I know. Which then goes to tell us that 5 plus 2 is, you know, 7 too many.
Exponential.
So,
Well, I think we all pick one and they'll fix the chairman.
you give me a lot of confidence. Let's go ahead and, my thoughts were simply that, you know, we solicit applications from folks that want to serve, and then we simply do it, you know, and it's just as we appoint advisory board members. I'm not honestly, Mike, I'm not a big fan of us just picking our favorites to do it. I can see there being issues that come into play there, and haven't. So I wonder, I mean, that was, Sharon and I have talked about some about this, and y'all might have it with her as well. But these are people serving in a great role, and it's important.
So you're not making that decision tonight, just setting the public hearing date, so I don't want to get bogged down. I just want to mention this, so you can give it some thought. But Cliff, you've worked on these.
Oh, yes.
So you may have thoughts on.
I do, first of all, in terms of how they pick the chair or don't, you can certainly do that, and maybe that's what you want to, or you can have them select. I think that it would be helpful to that body, I know, because I'm the general counsel for the Orange County Charter Review. We're finishing up our work by the beginning of June, and it's been more than a year of hard labor, primarily because we were provided with zero in the way of bylaws, guidance, or anything else. So everything from how a committee was appointed, how our topics were studied, and what the role was of the Charter Review Commission became a topic of discussion, sometimes for hours on end, and sometimes debate. So I will simply tell you that for the future consideration, I would think that one of the things you may wish to do to avoid all that is to provide them with a set of bylaws or a resolution that contains operating procedures, so they'll know, for example, do we have to follow Robert's rules, a 3-hour debate, or do we not have to? Can we study a topic that we want to put in, even though the law says it's illegal to do so? We've had that debate. And there are many more. I won't regale you with them, but I will tell you this. Here's what I would say that I've learned. This is going to be about my 12th to 13th charter review for various governments. The number one thing is to take people, and I can't say this strongly enough, that are smart and understand civics and government and how it's supposed to work and what's supposed to be in a charter, what's not supposed to be in a charter, the difference between an ordinance and a charter, the fact that a charter is a constitution, non-book ordinances, and everything else. Things like you can't direct the governing body how to spend their money because you can't, etc. Now, I don't expect everybody to know that. What I hope that you will do, however you appoint, is that you appoint people that are at least open to the idea that if they don't know it, that there is somebody that does, and they'll listen to them.
Very good. And the action that you're looking for here, motion that we're looking for, Ms. Sharon?
Introduction and set the public hearing date for June 8th, 2020.
Do we need a public period on this one?
They all rushed forward early.
I know.
Yeah, sorry. Anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? It's a requirement that you're smart.
They got one out.
Hearing none, seeing none, not that everybody's not smart. We'll bring it back to council and motion be in order.
I'll make a motion to move the ordinance and set the action hearing date for June 8th, 2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Maria?
Councilman Bayers? Guthrie.
Aye. Smooth.
Councilman Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Councilman Wild?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye. Okay, Ms. Maria, gonna get us started on dental amalgam?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 20, Article 3, Division 1 and 3 of the Maitland Code of Ordinances to adopt and amend requirements for existing new dental facility, address, healthcare facility, and reverse distribution hazardous waste pharmaceuticals, to set forth regulation and exemption for amygdala filling, removal, or placement in dental vacuum suction systems, and to provide for remedies for prohibited discharges, providing for legislative finding, providing for conflict, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Now, Kim, you get to make this interesting. Go right ahead.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pressure. Okay, well, as part of our agreement with Altamont Springs for sewer, we are required to update our code with any type of updates that they make to their code for discharges. So in March of this year, they adopted an ordinance that addressed the new federal regulations that's known as the dental amalgam rule. And it's basically addressing dental offices because the amalgam has mercury involved with it. So they have DMPs and other things that have to be addressed in the dental offices. So as a part of that agreement, we basically have to adopt whatever Altamont Springs adopts, or we can be more stringent with it.
All right, now, did anybody have any questions?
Good.
Okay, anybody from the public like to address this riveting agenda item? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to council, and again, a motion will be in order.
On the roll. I'll move to introduce it. Okay, since I'm on a roll, it's set June 8th, 2020 as the hearing date. And again, I'll second it.
On a roll.
Yeah, on a roll. Second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I dare you, Mike, you got any questions or comments?
Actually, I have quite a few questions now.
Yeah, well, we'll save those till June 8th, too. Miss Lindsay, any thoughts?
No.
I didn't want you to feel left out. All right, so Miss Maria, call the roll, please.
Councilman Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Councilman Wild,
Aye.
Councilman Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay, this is flying right along. All right, am I missing anything? We have no discussion items? Okay. Anybody got any reports? Ms. Sharon?
Just quickly, I think you're all aware, we reopened the boat ramp this weekend, and it seems to go fairly well. So there's some barricades there that limit the parking. Additionally, we still have limited, we're all working on regular hours now. There's a few teleworking. We still have the limited lobby access at this point. Facilities has installed some plexiglass, so we may be able to, like they're doing at the Maitland Public Library, in those areas, so we may be able, I don't know, like Publix or anywhere else, to open those fairly soon. I did hear from Art and History, and they will be doing a limited reopening for some of the museum on the 28th. So they will have some hours available there. We should be getting our May revenues, which will be April. May revenues are April sales. So we'll be looking, they start pretty much around the 15th of the month, and I'll be tracking them, and I'll do the similar memo to what I sent out.
Today, May 28th was the day.
Yeah, around May 28th, for sure, we'll have all of those revenues, but the major ones, I've just given you guys the key revenues. The other ones are not material to our, where we're headed. These are, because they will affect next year. You saw what a great portion of our sales tax comes from tourists, hotels, and parks compared to the state. So even statewide, we're in a unique position here in Central Florida. But I will, as soon as I see any of those and there's any trends, I will let you know, because that's going to be key. We're finishing up our budget for 2021. We've got to get it to you by July, and we're just sort of in a holding pattern so we see what that number is.
Get some kind of rhythm to that.
Yeah, I mean, now that there is some reopening, then there is some relief, but you never know where that's going to go.
Yeah.
That'll be our first real tell, because April will be the first full month of all the closures.
Yeah. Anybody else? Mike?
I just want to say, couple things, just real quick, was that I think the parks, as I said before, having the parks open during this has been great, and to Jay and that staff, I mean, the parks are great. I mean, our parks are, I think, are some of the best in Central Florida for the community sense, and I think having those open and having the trails that we have and things like that have been great for this, and then also the communication we've been doing about our in support of our businesses has been great, and I think that they needed our help, and hopefully we were there for them, and I think the community was recognizing that too. I think that the community at large has recognized the strides that the city has made, trying to create a sense of place and having an environment where these businesses can survive. So when people couldn't frequent those businesses like they used to, I think the community's done what they can to hopefully, I think the community was until we can get back down here and have streets open again, and closed again, and to be open again for the public activity. So I think it's been great, the communications we've been having on the website, and so Robin and everyone else who's been doing that. I think that's been really important to support these businesses throughout the way. So.
Yeah, the tables out here, I was out here on Cinco de Mayo, and all the tables out in the park, and people are just grabbing their food and going and sitting in the park, and it's a wonderful thing. So the more we promote that, the better.
What an eye-opener to have something that people miss.
You know, it's just great to see Sanford Brewery just kind of sit there like this, working out all their.
Yeah. All right, Vance, any thoughts? Anything you want to share? All right, I promised, oh, Lindsay, I'm sorry. Lindsay, you want to share any announcements or reports?
Nope, nothing for me this evening.
Okay, you can hold that thought. You'll have another chance.
Okay.
I made a promise to Miss Bev that I would bring up something here that I believe does bear some attention, and that's our pursuit over the last several years of gateway signage. Whether it's on 7092 Maitland Avenue, trying to brand ourselves as well as we can, because we do have a lot to be proud of. And so that's something that I would like to see us be able to find some way to do in the next fiscal year, because it's well worth it. I on a different note, I actually spent a couple hours down at the boat ramp on Saturday. You know, people wondered who that, perverted looking guy hanging out down by the ramp was, and I had known up to that. But so played a little bit of traffic cop at the ramp, and some folks shouldn't have boats and trailers. So, and that no matter how nice the boat is. Also had a chance to get out on the Dog Island Friday afternoon late, and I've got to admit, after all these years of being around it, I've never, ever, ever seen Dog Island that clean, ever. Now, I scared a few drunk young kids to death, but again, the same perverted old guy walking around on Dog Island that wasn't saying a word. So, but it was much, much better than I expected. It had been at least a year or so since I've been out there.
We still have 2 trash bins out there. I know
there were. I remember one in particular that I noticed because there was less than 10% full of the trash bin. But apparently Winter Park had been out there the day before with their trash barge, and just somebody went to town on that thing. I was.
I think there's also a group of volunteers
Yeah.
who clean it up, so they may have been out there as well.
And I thought I heard Vance say something about volunteering LAB and Amy and the crew, getting them out there. But beyond that, it was the experience at the boat ramp was terrific. People were parked where they were supposed to be parked, essentially, and they couldn't, thank Mike Thomas enough for opening up the boat ramp for them, and gave them all credit.
As long as my tire.
But beyond that, it was, I told everybody there that I was Michael Watts, so, it worked out fine. So it worked very well. Anything else? Anybody want to address anything? Hearing none? Then we're done.
Do you want to just dig up the old charter, or the one on
Bye,
the
thank you.
See you, Miss Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay.
Sustainability Committee, and then send it out and add something for Robert's rules of order. I think I have something in there that just.